أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين رحمة للعالمين مولانا وسيدنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين. Welcome to, I believe this is our fifth session on the commentary of Ziyarat Jamia Kabira, and we have reached the following section, Mahbit al-Wahyi. Now, again, let's not go into too much detail. So again, the same principle will apply as we discussed in the last 2 weeks, that Assalamu alaikum is continuing in these phrases. So what we are really saying is here is Assalamu alaikum ya Mahbit al-Wahyi. Peace be upon you, O the Mahbit of Wahi. Now, from a grammatical point of view, once again, the word Mahbit is again Isme Makan. This is the third Isme Makan in a row. The first one was Mawdi al-Risala, the second one was Mukhtalaf al-Malaika, and now we have Wa Mahbit al-Wahi. So Isme Makan is the place where that verb takes place. So Mahbit comes from Habata or huboot, which means when something separates from some other place and comes down and settles in a place. So what has come down? This is talking about wahi, revelation. Revelation starts with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It then comes down and settles somewhere. And this is the mahbit. This is the place where it is settling. For example, we say in Hadith Kisa, فَهَبَتَ الْأَمِينُ جِبْرَائِيلُ وَقَالَ السَّلَامُ عَلَيْكَ Ya Rasulallah. This word is used in Hadith Kisa. فَهَبَتَ الْأَمِينُ Jibraeel. Jibraeel came down and settled where the 5 holy personalities were under the cloak in the event that we know as Hadith Kisa. So what Agha Jawadi says is that there are 2 words that we use for revelation. One is huboot and one is nuzul. We can say wahi was sent down, nuzul. And when we say huboot, what we are saying is almost identical, that it came down and it settled. Now, therefore, Mahbitul Wahi is the place that Wahi, once it descends from its source, it settles in that place. And this is what we are addressing the Imams of Ahlul bayt as, that you are the place in which the revelation of Allah comes down and it settles with you. It rests with you. It remains with you. Now, what is wahi? If you look at the dictionary definition of wahi, wahi means a notification that is swift and secret. And usually with wahi, only the one to whom it is communicated will understand wahi. Others around them will not understand it. It's that kind of secretive, swift, and secret communication that only the recipient will understand this communication. This is wahi. Unless, of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or whoever is giving the wahi, and there are other types of wahi which we'll come on to, unless, of course, he wants other people to understand it. In that case, he will provide the context to the other people, and they will also be able to understand it. So this is Mahbit al-Wahi. Now, let us discuss this in a little bit more depth. When we usually say wahi, that people received wahi or Allah sent wahi, we are referring to the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have a very special position. What made them so special? Because at the end of the day, if you look at the prophets, they were men, they were human beings. They had human bodies, they had human physical characteristics. They lived lives, they breathed oxygen, they ate food, they wore clothes, they slept at night, they woke up in the morning. All of these things apply to the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Physically, they were normal human beings. Now, this is referred to in the Holy Qur'an. Surah number 23, verse number 33. وَقَالَ الْمَلَأُ مِنْ قَوْمِهِ. Some of the elite of his people, referring to one of the prophets, said, and they were faithless, and they denied the hereafter, and we had given them affluence in the world. They said the following, Ma hadha illa basharun mithlukum. This is just a human being like you. Like, why are you so fascinated by this man? What's so special about him? What we see is just a normal human being. He looks like the rest of us. Ya'kulu mimma ta'kuluna min. He eats the same food that you eat. Wa yashrabu mimma tashrabun. And he drinks the same things that you drink. What's so special about him? Agha Jawadi here makes an interesting point. He says, yes, people in the past used to say this. They used to say, for example, what is so special? This is just a normal person like us. He doesn't have any distinguishing characteristics. But Agha Jawadi says that this was just an excuse that they were giving. Because they didn't want to submit to the truth, they used these feeble kind of things to come up with these arguments to say, he looks just like us, he acts just like us, he breathes, he walks, he talks, he's nothing special. So this was one of the challenges that the people of the past used to give, but really it was a very empty challenge. Of course, we can answer this very easily. What we say is they had to be like us. They had to have the same physical characteristics as us. They had to be the closest example as possible for us to follow and relate to. So the people use these as excuses to get out of what the Prophet was trying to tell them, but otherwise these are very feeble kinds of excuses. If a prophet did not have humanity like we have humanity, he did not know human emotions, he doesn't understand human needs, he doesn't understand human dependencies, human desires, etc., then how would he be able to even tell people what is right and what is wrong? How would he be able to do amra bil ma'ruf and nahi anil munkar? It would not be possible because he simply wouldn't be on the same page as human beings. So he had to be a human being like us. However, if we say they're human beings like us, then what's the difference? What is the big difference between us and them? Why are they so special? There is one thing that makes them especially special, and that is their soul and their spirituality. And the fact that they had souls and spirituality which were lofty enough that they could receive wahi. This is what made them very, very special. قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ يُوحَى إِلَيَّ أَنَّمَا إِلَهُكُمْ إِلَهٌ وَاحِدٌ. This is Surah number 18, verse number 110. Allah says to the Holy Prophet, say, yes, I am just a human being like you, but what separates me from you? Yuha ilayya. It is revealed to me, etc., etc., that your God is one God. Whoever expects to encounter his Lord, let him act righteously and not associate anyone with the worship of his Lord, etc., etc. So yes, of course, they are normal human beings. They are normal human beings in the physical sense, but their soul and spirituality elevates them to a lofty status, and that lofty status gives them the ability to receive wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it is this wahi which sets them apart from anyone else. Now, let's look into wahi in a little bit more depth. There are different types of wahi. The first one, which we have referred to in previous sessions, is called tashri'i, legislative wahi. This is for the messengers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The messengers of Allah receive this kind of wahi. What about Ahlul bayt? Do they also receive this kind of wahi? Well, Agha makes a very interesting point here. He says, look, if you look at the position of Ahlul bayt, number one, they are very closely associated with Rasulullah. We discussed this in session 1 or 2 when we were discussing Ya Ahla Baytin Nubuwa, that they are so much close to Rasulullah, and they are actually the institution of prophethood themselves, and they are at the level of the selves of the Prophet, because Qur'an says wa anfusana wa anfusakum. The Holy Prophet brings Ahlul Bayt as an example of ourselves and yourselves. Their position in all of these things qualifies them to also be described as the place where legislative wahi settles as well. Yes, the Holy Prophet received it, but they were also aware of it. They were also hearing it. As I said earlier, the person who sends the wahi can allow other people to understand it, but he provides them the context in which to do so. Here, there's a quick hadith which I wanted to mention. This is from Imam Hussein alayhi salam when he speaks to someone from Kufa. He says, Ama wallahi ya akha ahlil Kufa. He says, I swear by Allah, O brother of the city of Kufa, law laqaytuka bil Madina. If you had met me, we are meeting right now in the way towards Karbala and Kufa. Had you met me in Medina, la araytuka athara Jibraeel. I would have shown you the footprints of Jibraeel min darina, in our house, wa nuzulihi bil wahyi ala jaddi, and I would have shown you where he was coming down, descending with wahi for my grandfather, the Holy Prophet. So Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam were aware of even the legislative and tashri'i wahi which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was sending to Rasulullah. Hence, we can describe them also as the Mahbit, the place where legislative wahi settles. This is point number one. Number two, another form of wahi is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends wahi or revelation for support of certain people, the prophets, the imams, etc. How does he support them? He gives them hidden news, hidden knowledge, knowledge of the unseen, knowledge that other people don't have access to. And this is also not restricted to the Holy Prophet. This happens to prophets and non-prophets. This includes all of our ma'sumeen. Again, let me bring two ahadith for you from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Both of them are from Imam Sadiq. He says that regarding the imams of Ahlul Bayt, the deeds of the servants of Allah, so our deeds, mine, yours, everyone's deeds, are presented to them. And they actually have access to these things. They receive these things from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they look at it. When they see something good, they rejoice. When they see something bad, it makes them sad. Another hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Tu'radu ala Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. He said that the deeds of the people are presented to the Prophet. This is in Imam Sadiq's time, he's saying. Hence, even after they leave this world, they are presented with our deeds. So even now, Rasulullah is presented with our deeds. Even now, Amirul Mu'mineen is presented with our deeds. Even now, Janab Fatima salamullahi alayha sees what we do and is presented with our deeds. وَآلِهِ أَعْمَالُ الْعِبَادِ كُلَّ صَبَاحٍ وَمَسَاءٍ. Every morning and evening they receive these records, both the good and the bad. فَحْذَرُوا. So be very careful in your actions, because these are being presented to our beloved Imams and the Holy Prophet. Therefore, it's not even limited to the Imam of the time. Sometimes we think, well, now that the 11th Imam has left the world, it's the 12th Imam who receives our deeds. No, all of them do, whether they are in the world or they're not in the world. They get this honor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they can see our deeds and they are presented with our records. But of course, for the Imam of the time, it is even more special and even more significant that he sees the deeds, because he is the one who is in charge of us at this time. Agha then makes a nice point. He says regarding Shab-e Qadr. Shab-e Qadr is that special time, very, very special time, when the communications are even more so. They increase in number, in quality, and therefore the Imams are without doubt, just looking at Shab-e Qadr itself, without bringing any other hadith or any other proof, just Shab-e Qadr itself, the fact that Shab-e Qadr exists year on year, this tells us that Imams are definitely Mukhtalaf al-Malaika. They are the place where the angels come and go. They are the Mahbit al-Wahyi. They are the place where Wahi comes and settles. And they are so much more. For example, Khuzan al-Ilm, which we'll discuss in the future. They are those treasure troves of knowledge, because Allah sends on Shab-e Qadr so many more Malaika and the Ruh. We'll discuss Ruh later. And where will they go? They will go to the Imam of the time. Qur'an. Qur'an uses Wahi in a number of different contexts. The first one is, of course, the wahi, as we've discussed, that Allah sends to the Prophet. This is how the term wahi has been most used and most understood. In Qur'an and Hadith, it is the wahi from Allah to the prophets of Allah. Number two, not only prophets, it can even be to animals in a way that it suggests to them things that are instinctive for them. For example, Surah number 16, verse number 68, وَأَوْحَى رَبُّكَ إِلَى النَّحْلِ. Your Lord inspired, using the same word, wahi, awha. Your Lord inspired the bee, and Allah tells the bee, ittakhidhi min al-jibali buyutan, make your home in the mountains, etc., etc. Number three, so we've had prophets, we've had animals. Number three, people who were definitely not prophets, but they also received a form of wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The obvious one is the mother of Nabi Musa. وَأَوْحَيْنَا, again from the same word, wahi, أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمِّ Musa. We revealed to the mother of Moses, telling her, أَنِرْضَعِيهِ, nurse him, فَإِذَا خِفْتِ عَلَيْهِ فَأَلْقِيهِ فِي الْيَمِّ, etc. Then when you fear for him, cast him into the river, do not fear, do not grieve, for we will restore him to you, etc., etc. This is verse number 7 of Surah number 28. So even non-prophets who are human beings, the mother of Nabi Musa being one example, received a form of wahi. Another type of wahi, which the Qur'an speaks about, is probably something that we don't usually consider. Do you know how the devils, the people of shaitan, those who are in the group of shaitan, the devils, the shayateen, how do they communicate with one another? Again, they use a form of wahi, because the meaning of wahi is a secret and swift communication. وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا مِمَّا لَمْ يُذْكَرِ اسْمُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ. The verse begins by telling us some of the laws of food and meat and which animals we're allowed to eat. This is Surah number 6, verse number 121. وَإِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ لَيُوحُونَ إِلَىٰ أَوْلِيَائِهِمْ. Indeed, the devils inspire their friends to dispute with you, using which word? لَيُوحُونَ, from wahi. So even they have a system of these swift and secretive communications. Fifthly, in the Quran, it mentions even between people, I may have some kind of way of communicating with you in a secretive way. Maybe I use some kind of signs, maybe I use some kind of symbols. Even this could be considered as wahi, a secretive and swift communication that some people may have with one another. But of course, when we speak about our imams, we are speaking about the first category. The first category was the way Allah communicates with the prophets. We're not talking about the animals or the other non-infallible people or any of the other ones. We're talking about the imams receiving the wahi which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends to the prophets, not the legislative wahi, although they may be aware of that as well, but all of the other type of wahi, like hidden knowledge, ilm ghaib, knowledge about what's going to happen, knowledge about something that otherwise they wouldn't have known, knowledge which supports them, etc. Is there a difference amongst the prophets? Do they all receive the same amount of revelation, or is there differences here? There is definitely a difference between the prophets according to their ranks. The higher the rank of the prophet, the more wahi they received, and also the more special the wahi was that they received. So both in quantity and quality, the higher the rank of the prophet, the higher the quantity and quality of the revelation. For example, the Holy Prophet at times received wahi without any intermediary. Then Agha goes on and he discusses a few more things. He discusses, for example, Jibraeel himself, alayhi salam, the great angel Jibraeel. He says, look, we have a number of discussions that did the Imams have access to Jibraeel? Did they speak with Jibraeel, or was it with other angels that they had their conversations with? So here, first of all, let me begin by quoting one of the ahadith which we have. Towards the end of his life, the Holy Prophet received Jibraeel. Jibraeel came to Rasulullah. And Jibraeel says, Ya Muhammad, هذا آخر نزولي إلى الدنيا. O Muhammad, this is the last time I'm coming to the world. إنما كنت أنت حاجتي منها. Because all this time when I was coming, you were the main reason I was coming. And now you are leaving this world. So this is my last visit to the world. So this could suggest that they didn't have access to Jibraeel. However, Agha completely refutes this. He says, no. He says, number one, even if we accept this literally to be true, that Jibraeel will not come down to the world again, other angels are there who can deliver wahi. It's not only Jibraeel who can deliver wahi, there are other angels as well. So it doesn't really matter in that sense that the imams can receive wahi from other angels. So this is number one. Number two, when Jibraeel says this, that this is the last time I'm coming, what Agha says is that he means this is the last time I'm coming to deliver the specific type of wahi of prophethood. There will be no more prophethood wahi after this. But yes, of course, I will still come because the world is still here. The world is still functioning. And the imams themselves have reported that they have spoken to Jibraeel. Thirdly, a very strong proof for this is that, again, look at Surah Qadr, that definitely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Qadr, all of the angels descend on the night of Qadr. And Jibraeel is one of the angels. So the Qur'an itself is confirming that Jibraeel has not cut all relations from this world after the death of the Holy Prophet. What has cut? That special kind of wahi that Jibraeel used to bring, which was related to prophethood, because prophethood is no longer here. Instead, we have the imamat, which is a continuation of the office of prophethood, but in a different sense. So Surah Qadr itself confirms that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tanazzalul malaikatu fiha, that Allah is sending the angels in the night of Qadr every year. And Jibraeel is, of course, one of the angels. And then Surah Al-Qadr mentions war-ruh. Now, ruh could be Jibraeel himself. So it could be that all of the angels descend and Jibraeel. But what is more likely is that ruh is even a greater creation of Allah than Jibraeel even. So it's something even more magnificent than the greatest angel of Allah. If that's the case, then Agha says, if ruh descends on Shab-e Qadr, then of course Jibraeel would descend, because ruh is even greater than Jibraeel. So a lesser being would definitely descend. Now, another lovely point which Agha Jawadi brings, and we'll finish with this point. Who is the teacher and who is the student? If Jibraeel or any other angel comes and gives news to Rasulullah, gives news to Amirul Mu'mineen, gives news to Janab Fatima, gives news to Imam Hassan, are they higher than the imams in their rank? Because they are teaching the imams something that the imams didn't know. Or no, we always say that the imams are the best of all creatures. They're better than even the prophets. They're better than even the angels. So which is it? Agha says this is really not a strong thing to say at all, because just because they bring the news doesn't mean that they're teaching the imams. They're just intermediaries. The teacher of the prophet and the imams is always Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The angel only acts as the intermediary and the messenger. They're bringing knowledge from the source of all knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and giving it to the perfect human beings on earth at any one time, which is the Prophet, Janab Fatima, and the Imams. Otherwise, we have many examples of so-called inferior beings giving information to superior beings. 3 examples we have straight away off the top of my head. Number 1 is Nabi Khidr and Nabi Musa. Nabi Musa was definitely higher in rank than Nabi Khidr. He is named as one of the Ulul Azm. Nabi Khidr is not named as one of the Ulul Azm, but still Nabi Khidr was able to impart knowledge and wisdom to Nabi Musa. But it doesn't mean that he was anything superior. Number two, during the time of Nabi Sulaiman, Hudhud came and told him that I've seen a magnificent country and there's a queen there, the queen of Sheba, what we say in English, or Saba, which was in Yemen. So does that mean Hudhud was more superior to Nabi Sulaiman? No. And we have other examples. For example, the ants conversing with Nabi Sulaiman. I don't have time right now, otherwise that is also a very beautiful narration. How the ants converse with Nabi Sulaiman, and they also impart to him knowledge and wisdom to the extent that he's so impressed that he smiles at what the ants tell him. So it doesn't mean just because you receive the wisdom of Allah by an angel that the angel is superior to you. No, not at all. Imams, Ma'sumin, Rasulullah are all superior to every other kind of creature there may be, definitely more superior than the angels, because the angels are only intermediaries bringing the knowledge of Allah to the Ma'sumin. I think we'll stop here and we'll go to questions if there are any for the last few minutes. Assalamu alaikum. Alaikum salam. You explained that the Ahlul Bayt are recipients of Wahy, including supportive Wahy such as hidden news. We have also the belief that the Imams possess the knowledge of the unseen. What is the point of the supportive Wahy since the Imams already know of the unseen? Are servants of Allah, first and foremost. They are instructed by Allah. They need Allah all the time, like we all need Allah all the time. So Imams are always constantly in need of God. They always need the support, the backing, the moral support, if you like, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to strengthen them, to support them. This is their unique role, and the strength that they have all comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think that brings us to the end of the session, inshallah. We will continue next time. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.